Imagine going to the grocery store and seeing bread jump from $3 to $5 in 1 month. Now imagine that happening to everything you buy. Not for a few months, but for years. Your paycheck buys less every single week. Your savings in the bank lose value. Everything costs more and more. This isn't a made-up story. This is real life for millions of people in Turkey today. The country has been stuck in an inflation crisis for almost 10 years, and it keeps happening again and again. As of December 2025, official data shows annual inflation in Turkey is still at a staggering 30.89%. And that might sound like good news because it's down from 85% in late 2022, but 30% inflation is still a major crisis. This makes it hard for families to plan their budgets. And it makes it hard for businesses to plan ahead. Store owners don't know what prices will be next week. But why does Turkey keep falling into this same trap over and over again? The answer shows us how political power and money policy can hurt regular people. The story starts in 2018. That's when Turkey's president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, took control of the country's central bank. He gave himself the power to pick who runs it. From that point on, the bank was no longer free to make its own choices. The central bank was supposed to keep prices stable. Instead, it became a tool for political goals. Think about that. Imagine if the US president could fire the head of the Federal Reserve before each election. Imagine they could pick someone who would make the economy look good for a short time, even if it caused problems later. That's the path Turkey chose. Erdogan also pushed a strange idea, that high interest rates cause inflation. Most experts say the opposite. When prices rise too fast, you raise interest rates to slow things down. But in Turkey, the president's view became the rule. He hired people who agreed with him. He kept firing and hiring new bank leaders. In just 3 years, he picked 3 different people to run the bank. Each one cut interest rates even as prices kept rising. It was like a doctor saying the cure for a fever is to make it hotter. The result was bad for Turkey. People who invest money saw that the central bank had lost trust. They started pulling their money out. This caused a money crisis. The Turkish lira crashed. It lost more than half its value against the US dollar in just 2 years. Here's where things get worse. Turkey buys a lot of goods from other countries. When your money loses value, the cost of everything you import goes way up. This is called imported inflation. A weak lira made energy, food, and factory supplies much more expensive. Those higher costs got passed to shoppers, making inflation even worse. Then people lost even more faith in the lira. They sold more of it, making it worth even less. It's a terrible cycle. By late 2022, inflation hit a scary 85%. That means something that cost 100 lira at the start of the year would cost 185 lira by the end. The government had to change course. Starting in 2023, the central bank finally started raising interest rates fast. They went from 8.5% all the way up to 50%. This tough fix has started to work. Inflation is coming down from its peak, but the country is still in trouble. Rates are still around 37 to 38% as of early this year. Inflation is still 10 times higher than in the US. The government now says it will follow normal economic rules. But people remember what happened. Trust takes time to rebuild. This political control is the main problem. But Turkey also has other weak spots that make it vulnerable. The country spends more money buying things from other countries than it makes selling to them. Think of it like your personal budget. If you spend more than you earn every month, you're in trouble. In November 2025, this gap grew to $4 billion. To fill this gap, Turkey needs money from foreign investors. But when investors get scared by strange policies, that money stops coming in. Or worse, it leaves. This drains the country's savings of foreign money, putting more pressure on the lira. It's like a hole in a boat, and the political choices are the storm that floods it. There are other problems too. Turkey's farms have been hit by bad droughts and cold weather. This caused food prices to jump. The government also raised the minimum wage by 27% for 2026. This helps workers but can also push prices higher if workers don't produce more. But these are just sparks. The real fuel was years of bad money policy. All of these problems feed off each other. They create what experts call inflation expectations. When people expect prices to keep rising fast, they act in ways that make inflation stick around. Businesses raise prices early to stay ahead of their own rising costs. Workers demand big pay raises because their money buys less. Then businesses have to raise prices again to pay those wages. This behavior keeps inflation going. Turkish officials say they want to break this pattern. They hope to see inflation under 10% by 2027. But they're not just fighting numbers. They're fighting a way of thinking that has changed how the whole economy works. Turkey's story is a clear warning about why central banks need to be free from political control. It shows what happens when money policy is used for short-term political goals. In fact, Turkey is now used as a warning in talks about political pressure on the U.S. Federal Reserve. When investors and the public trust that a central bank will keep prices stable, that trust is its most important tool. Once that trust is broken, rebuilding it is very slow and painful. It takes years of tough, unpopular choices. These are the very choices that politics often won't allow. Politicians want to win the next election. They want to make people happy now. But sometimes the right choice is hard and painful. Experts predict that if Turkey keeps its tight policy, inflation could fall to around 15% by the end of 2026. That's progress, but it's still crisis-level inflation. Most countries try to keep inflation around 2%. The road back to stable prices is long. For Turkish people, it means years more of money that buys less. It means hard choices about basic needs. Do we buy food or medicine? Do we pay rent or buy clothes for the kids? It means financial stress that affects big life decisions. Young people can't save for a house. Families can't plan for college. And for everyone watching, it's a clear reminder that the value of your money isn't just about economics. It's deeply about politics and power. Money only works when people trust it. When a country's leaders ignore the basic rules of finance to chase short-term goals, the people end up paying the price for years. Turkey's inflation isn't a natural disaster. It's a man-made one, and that's the most important lesson of all. If this explanation helped you understand a tricky global story, please give the video a thumbs up. It helps more than you know. To make sure you never miss our breakdowns of money and power around the world, subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. Then, let me know in the comments. Which country's economy should we explain next? And if you found this useful, please share it with one friend who would find it interesting too. Thanks for watching and see you next time.